Magandang araw sa iyo kaibigan. Ngayong araw ay magdi-define lang tayo ng mga meanings at konting history tungkol sa fundamentals of criminal investigation. Pero bago tayo mag-umpisa ay baka maaaring pakipindot na din ng subscribe button at ng kampana para palagi kitang ma-notify sa aking mga future uploads. So di na natin ito patatagalin pa at umpisahan na natin.
Okay, let's start!
1754 History of investigation started in England. 1754 Founding the Bow Street Runners. First privately paid group to follow up investigation of crime in Paris, France. 1852 First police lineup in Boston was introduced. 1961 U.S. Supreme Court in case of Mapp versus Ohio rules that a legally obtained evidence is inadmissible. 1966 Miranda versus Arizona. Establish the right of a person under custodial investigation. Criminal investigation is an art which deals with the identity and location of the offender and provides evidence of guilt through criminal proceeding. Investigation: the collection of facts to accomplish a threefold aim: to identify the guilty party, to locate the guilty party, and to provide evidence of his guilt. Tools of investigation, or the three I's of investigation: information, interview, interrogation, and instrumentation or criminalistics. Number 1. Information. It is the knowledge, data which an investigator acquired from records and persons. Regular source is acquired from open sources, records, files, cultivated. Source are information furnished by informants, informers. Grapevine source are information given by the underworld characters such as prisoners or criminals. Number 2. Interview is a conversation with a purpose, motivated by a desire to obtain certain information from the person being interviewed as to what was done, seen, felt, heard, tasted, smelled, or known. This is the questioning of a person believed to possess knowledge that is in official interest to the investigator. Number 3. Instrumentation. It is the application of instruments and methods of physical science to the detection of crimes. In cases where there are no significant physical evidence to be found, then the use of instrumentation is relatively unimportant. What are the qualities of a good investigator? Number 1. Perseverance. Number 2. Intelligence. Number 3. Honest, incorruptible at with personal integrity. Number 4. Understanding of the people and environment. Number 5. Keen power of observation. Number 6. Resourceful and quick-witted. The National Forensic Science Training Institute, or NFSTI, under the PPSC, is an institution that trains uniformed personnel of the PNP to become a certified investigator. What is ironic format? The interview of a witness can be described by its acronym IRONIC, which stands for Identity, Rapport, Opening Statement, Narration, Inquiry, and Conclusion. Identity. Prior to the commencement of an interview, the investigator should identify himself to the subject by name, rank, and agency. Except when there is no need to know the officer's identity. Rapport. It is good to get the positive feeling of the subject towards the investigators. Such friendly atmosphere is a vital for both the subject and the investigator to have a better interaction. Opening statement. The investigator must have to indicate why the subject is being contracted. Narration. The witness should be allowed to tell all he knows with little interruptions from the investigator. Inquiry. After all information have been given by the subject, that is the time for the investigator to ask question to clarify him about the case under investigation. Conclusions. After the interview, it is but proper to close the interview with utmost courtesy and thank you the subject for his cooperation. What are the ways of identifying the criminals? 1. By confession and admission. 2. Eyewitness. 3. Circumstantial evidence. 4. Associative evidence. What is confession and admission? Let's first define confession. Confession, it is the declaration of an accused expressing, acknowledging his guilt of the offense charged. What are the effects of confession? Number 1, may be given in evidence against him in the investigation or trial of the offense with which he is charged. Number 2, may be given to prove the guilt of his companions, but it will pass a lot of organization and debate. What are the two types of confession? Number 1, judicial confession. Judicial confession is made by the suspect accused in open court. Number 2, extrajudicial confession. Extrajudicial confession is a kind of confession is inadmissible unless corroborated by proof of corpus delicti. The confession to be admissible, it must be voluntary, in writing and made with the assistance of a counsel of his own choice, with full understanding of the consequence of such confession, get separate for separate crimes. Next is the admission. What is admission? Admission is a self-incriminatory statement by the subject falling short of an acknowledgement of guilt. It is an acknowledgement of a fact or circumstances from which guilt may be inferred. It implicates but does not incriminate. It is also an acknowledgement that a fact, action or circumstances are true which strongly infer or directly admit guilt but lacks the detail of the elements of the crime. Next is what are the two kinds of criminals. Number 1, the known criminals fugitive. These are the criminals whose pictures are available from police files and records. Number 2, unknown criminals fugitive. These are the criminals whose identification are furnished by eyewitness only. Their picture records are not to the existence of that fact. Next is the methods of identification by witness. Number 1, verbal description. Number 2, photographic files rogues gallery. Number 3, general photograph. Number 4, artist sketched composite criminal illustration. Next, the determination of value of identification by eyewitness. The value of identification by eyewitness is depends on: Number 1, the ability to observe and remember distinct appearance of suspect. Number 2, prevailing condition of visibility. Number 3, the lapse of time. What are the procedures of identification by eyewitness? Number 1, physical lineup means of selecting a suspect from a group of innocent persons, usually composed of 7 to 10 persons. The purpose of lineup is to eliminate the power of suggestion. Number 2, physical show-up. Only one person is shown to the witness, usually at the scene of the crime and made immediately after the arrest of the suspect. What is circumstantial evidence? Circumstantial evidence is the facts or circumstances from which, either alone or in connection with other facts, the identity of the person can be inferred. What must be inferred to prove identity by circumstantial evidence? Number 1, motive is what induces the person to act. Number 2, intent is the result or accomplishment of the act. Number 3, opportunity, the physical possibility that the suspect could have committed the crime. What is associative evidence? Associative evidence. These are the pieces of evidence that will link the suspect to the crime scene. The suspect may leave some clues at the scene, such as weapons, tools, garments, or prints. Next is corpus delicti. It is the body of the crime or fact of specific loss or injury sustained. Importance of modus operandi. What is modus operandi? Modus operandi means the method of operations. It enables the investigators to recognize a pattern of criminal behavior, to predict, approximate the next target of the criminals, and to assist complainants to recognize the suspect by means of recorded information concerning the characteristics of criminal activities. And last but not the least is the types of informant. Let's first define informant. Informant is a person who gives information to the police. Now, what are the types of informants? Number 1, anonymous informant. Do not wish to be identified. 2, rival elimination, an informant who eliminate competition. 3, false informant. Gives no value information. 4, frightened informant. Types of informants which motivated by anxiety. 4, self-aggrandizing informant. A type of informant that hangs about the fringes of the criminals. 5, mercenary informant. A type of informant who sell an information. 6, double-crosser informant. To get more information. 7, woman informant. The most dangerous informant. And 8, legitimate informant. Operators of legit business. At yan po ang mga ilang bagay tungkol sa fundamentals of criminals investigation. Hindi ko na siya masyadong diniscuss mga kaibigan. Dahil alam kong alam nyong basic lang din ito sa inyo. Yun lamang po at maraming salamat po sa lahat ng mga nakinig. Kaibigan, nagustuhan mo ba ang topic na ito? Sana ay mayroon kang natutunan ngayong araw. Kung nagustuhan mo ang video na ito, ay maraming salamat sa'yo. Kung gusto mo pa ng mga videos na kagaya nito ay mag-follow, like at share ka lang sa @rcj4 Educational Blog upang patuloy kitang ma-notify sa aking mga future uploads. Hanggang dito na lang kaibigan at mag-iingat ka palagi. At maraming salamat ulit sa inyong lahat. God bless at hanggang sa muli.